He's podcasting.
Yo! Welcome back, baby. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I gotta turn this off. I'm gonna keep looking at it. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Can you believe that? 2 weeks in between episodes now. I apologize. 2 weeks between episodes. It's not going to continue that way, all right? I promise. Like I said in last episode, bit of a rough patch, bit of mental anguish going on in the Ethan camp, all right? Without Jason and his very serious high levels of executive function and discipline, we kind of fall apart over here. We have been streaming. Hope you guys have enjoyed those. Tons of views on Rumble. 88, actually tons of views in the last episode, 261. That's huge for us. Thank you for the love. A little bit of mental anguish. What little amount of executive function I have has been out the window for quite some time. But I'm thinking we're back. I've been, we're cooking with gas now, I hope. We're cooking with so much gas that I didn't really prep an episode. You know what I'm talking about? And I don't really think that that's the worst thing in the world. I think I've got to, like I said, I think I got to rip these. If they're solo, I think I just got to rip them. I can't get into the prep too much because it slows me down and I don't want to do it, so then I won't do the episode. All right, guys, I don't have a tremendous bit for today. I don't have some ultra funny thing to launch into, and I'm not sure that this episode's going to be a full hour because I'm going out of town tomorrow morning early, going to Missouri, and that puts a damper on my day a bit. You know what I'm talking about? So I got to move a little fast. Today. We will be streaming later. I guess actually by the time you see this, it will have been that we streamed yesterday. So that doesn't matter. It's not worth making an announcement. But the streams are back. All right, the streams are back. They're not back in full force. I'm still streaming irregularly, but we're streaming some Arc Raiders, some same old thing we've always been streaming. But just I'm doing a little bit more variety, get some more other survival games, other shooters in there as well. Because it's hard these days to find an Arc Raiders squad because people are, they're kind of over it. They're over Arc Raiders and they're over Embark. But that's neither here nor there. That's not what this show's about. And you didn't come here to hear about that kind of stuff, did you? No. What'd you come to hear about? You came here to get yelled at about, not taking your woman too seriously or whatever. Big show today. All right. Huge show today. Now I've got one topic in mind. I don't know how long that will stretch. So I've got another one in the back pocket if we need to burn more time. You know what I'm talking about? If I need to add more value to make this worth your while, because I know your time is so valuable, you would never spend it playing video games. You would never spend it staring at a broken car. You would never spend it shopping for guns you can't afford. You would never waste that time because it's so valuable. So if I'm going to ask you for 20 minutes to an hour of your time, I have to offer massive value, ultimate value, supreme market, ultimate top level, the best of the best. Okay? The kind of stuff that Google, only the highest, most premier enterprise companies offer. That's the kind of value we have to bring to the table here at Work Hard in order to justify you listening to this. And now I'm going to see how long I can go on without saying anything before you'll turn this off. Not really. Thank you guys for coming back this week. I appreciate it. Jason is still out, as you can see, Format is the same. I don't know when Jason's coming back. Hopefully, it won't be too much longer. Um, I don't know. We'll see. We shall see. I know he's a cornerstone of the show. I know he's needed, but sometimes you got to lock in on the personal life. You got to go on a hiatus from things, and that's okay. You know, the Lord has a plan for you, and sometimes that plan puts you in kind of a reactive state, and you gotta do what must be done. All right, today's topic would have been better last week because it was Easter, and this honestly was kind of my plan, was to do this episode last week, but Easter was not so long ago, and we ought not forget what Easter is about. And so I think it's still relevant. It's certainly relevant for me. It was super relevant last week. I don't know how passionate and fired up I'm going to get this week talking about it, but I do think that it is important, given the nature of the world as it is today, and the nature of so many people's individual lives, and the suffering that they are either perceiving themselves to be going through or are actually going through. I think it's important to get a little, not necessarily reality check, but I think be reminded of why we are here, and the tremendous sacrifice and blood that had to be shed, so that this life is meaningful, and that the next one can be glorious and not hellish, literally. So I do want to talk about, I have been thinking a lot about the nature of suffering, because I've been going through it. Heavy. And when you're in the, maybe it is better that I'm talking about this now, because I'm out of it a little bit, and so I'm not coping. I'm actually able to kind of look back and say, oh yeah, I was right in my assumptions while that was happening, because here I am on the other side of it, and those things were true. The nature of suffering, I've been going through it myself, and that can be, I think it's easier. You guys have heard me, if you're regulars on the show, regular listeners, you guys have heard me talk about hope and faith a lot. And that's kind of my shtick. That's like the main thrust of what I want people to understand, is that, life really comes down to what you believe it can be, and your level of peace. Really, the only thing that matters as far as your ability to experience peace and rest is how much you believe God. How much you believe God. How honest do you think He's being with you when He says that His burden is easy and His yoke is light? Because if you don't believe Him, you will work yourself into all manner of ill-begotten adventures and very heavy burdens, and you will be very unnecessarily taxed by reality. That belief that I've had, that I've talked about, was put to the test very harshly over the past, I would say 4 months. 3 months. We're at the beginning of the 4th month. I think it started December for me and pushed into this month, so maybe 4 months. But I was in between a rock and a hard place, bigly. Not necessarily with circumstances, although circumstances in my life contributed to that, but for the most part, it was a mental, emotional sort of battle. I think I don't think the fight is over by any means, but I do think that I've gotten to a resting place, maybe. That being said, um, my view around suffering has been the biblical view, or at least I hope it's the biblical view. I hope that it's as close to the biblical view as someone can get, which is that suffering, God uses suffering to form you. And I think I was a bit shaken up over the past 4 months. That belief, I saw cracks in that. There were moments where I didn't have hope that things were going to improve. And that was dark. That's a very disparaging place to be in, to not have hope. But because of the Easter story, I think we can look at the cross as, not I think we can, we obviously can look at the cross as the great sign of hope in our lives. What I want to talk about today is maybe a little bit of the nature of Christ's suffering as, to the hours leading up to his crucifixion, and the implications for his resurrection, not necessarily on your salvation, but the implications of his resurrection and victory on your life as a sort of self-improvement mechanism, or a symbol for the inevitability of your own self-improvement. So as intense as your suffering may be, as Christians, we obviously believe, everyone knows that Christ is just as much man as he is God. And so he had a human experience. He was deeply emotional, and battled with temptation just as much as we do. Yet he never gave in to any of that. He never was overcome by his own emotions, such that he no longer had control over himself. He never gave in to temptation, even in the face of Lucifer himself. And so the suffering that we endure, I think probably is not anywhere close to the suffering he endured. I think, I think it's easy for us to look at the material suffering of Christ on the cross, the beating, the crown of thorns, dying of suffocation, suspended by nails on a cross. It's obviously easy to focus in on that. And the Bible does describe that in much more detail than what happened after the cross, after Christ's death, and the time period in which he was totally separated. Not totally separated from God. He is God, but while he had descended into hell. To me, I would imagine that that's much more distressing. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe Scripture highlights the material suffering of Christ more because that is worse in some way. I can't imagine that the human ability to torture the body somehow surpasses the ephemeral ability to torture the soul. I would imagine that there's probably much greater levels of suffering that are possible while your soul is untethered than can be done upon you on this earth. So I would assume that when Christ was in Gethsemane sweating blood because he was so stressed out, which, by the way, okay, so you're the greatest man that's ever lived. All right. Now you're human, but you're still the greatest man that's ever lived. You have the most resolve, the most discipline, the most focus of anybody who's ever lived. And you're so distressed that you're sweating blood. That is a real thing that can happen. People can get that distressed. I think it's called something hema something. I'm not going to look it up. I don't know about you. I've never been so distressed that I've sweat blood. All right. So, right off rip, we're starting out with how much suffering have you undergone that Christ hasn't in a material sense? Just from the get, right off the right from go, it's more suffering than you've experienced. Um, Christ is greatly distressed, praying, begging God, um, not to have to. Give me a second. Hold on. I gotta get a big sniff. I gotta mute this mic here. Let me get it. Hold on. Now I gotta blow my nose. Hold on. I gotta blow my nose. Hold on. I'm gonna turn the camera off for this. Hold on. I gotta blow my nose. Gotta blow my nose. Gotta blow. Okay, I'm back. Do I boogies? Do I boogies? No boogies. Okay. Um. 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 I'm in a shambles. I'm covered in hair. I got stuff, nasal stuff going. I'm still sick, by the way. I'm still sick. I'm still blowing uh, green snot. Still don't feel great. I don't understand what's happening, but I'm still sick. Uh, what were we talking about? We're talking about Christ's suffering on the cross compared to yours. Before the cross, after the cross. Listen, Christ went through a tremendous negative experience, the likes of which you have never suffered. All right, that's the point that I'm trying to make. Uh, Maybe this is going to reach some third world where that's not true. Some listener is going to hear this who's like been had acid dipped on their face, or there are obviously people in Africa who get put in tires and lit on fire. So it's like not maybe there's more suffering, whatever. It doesn't matter. Don't hit me with the particulars. All right, I'm talking in general terms, and everybody who hears this has not got anywhere close to being crucified, so don't at me. All right, I don't want to hear about it. I took tremendous there was a lot of okay, I'm back. um I've tried now. This is set to attempt number 2 to kind of encapsulate what I'm saying, and it's not going well. So we're gonna change it up here a little bit. I'm gonna hit an old JP clip. All right, an old Jordan Peterson clip. Um, this is going to more succinctly connect the dots for us, so I can build off of that and make a a more coherent case for what I'm trying to say. So let's give this a listen real quick.
And that's the hero myth in a nutshell, by the way. The hero is the person who confronts horrible, chaotic potential and tames it and makes something of it. That's the fundamental human story. But the problem is that you have to face what you don't want to face in order to fix it. So you look at all the things about yourself that need to be burned off, that need to be dispensed with. Man, especially at the beginning, especially if you're screwed up, that may be like 95% of you just has to go up in flames. And it's painful. Even some of that stuff that you have to burn off doesn't want to die. And it'll scream in agony while you're burning it off. It's not pleasant, but if you know that you're the thing that can transcend your problems, most fundamentally, if you know you're the thing that, if it faces the problems, can transcend them, then you have the faith that would enable you to take stock of who you are.
Now, there are a couple things missing there because obviously Jordan Peterson, especially at that time, was coming from a pagan angle, and we'll fill in those gaps. But this is what I want to talk about today is you have to die. And that is extremely painful. The example set by Christ, I think people talk about being Christ-like. People talk about, the fruits of the Spirit and wanting to embody the example of Christ in their own life. But I don't often see that discussed in the sense that you must also go through your own version of the cross. Maybe that is discussed somewhere more broadly, and I'm just not aware of it, but I don't see that mentioned often. That um, you have to be crucified. You have to be, you have to experience your own ego death. You have to have those parts of you that ought to die sacrificed on a cross. You must experience the whip. You must experience crucifixion. You must go down. The clip Jordan Peterson talks about facing chaotic potential and making order out of it. Christ faced the ultimate agent of chaos, which is death, and defeated it, and gave humanity a way into the ultimate state of order, which is to live in glory with their creator forever. And in a microcosm, if you bring that down, if you want to talk about living out Christ's example, you have to have your night. You have to have your night in Gethsemane. You have to have your moment of sweating blood. You have to have your moment of being paraded in front of everyone, beaten and humiliated. You have to die. And that process is excruciating and unforgiving, and it does I can do this, I promise. Christ screaming out, asking God why he's been forsaken, why God has forsaken him, is an experience I've had. It does feel like that. It does feel. It can be extremely difficult to be a limited human being with a limited perception of time and of history and of your own life, and dealing with a God who sees it all. And you can only really see the moment that you're in. You have unreliable memory, an unreliable memory to look back on the past, so you can't be sure of what actually happened, and you have no ability to perceive the future. You can really only see the moment that you're in. And when that moment is defined by intense suffering, it can absolutely feel like God has abandoned you. And that can be very scary. But your pain, as Christians at least, we get to enjoy the truth, whether we believe it at the time or not. The truth is that God has not abandoned you. You are not forsaken. And this pain that you're going through does have a redemptive purpose. And you may not see it now. And I think it's very healthy to come to the place of acceptance, to accepting the fact that you may not ever see what glory that's bringing to God. The Hebrews suffered under Egypt's yoke for 430 years. They cried out many times. Many of the Hebrews that were put into slavery never got to see God answer their prayers. But that is kind of the beauty of this whole thing. I've said in the past, somebody asked a question once about how do you maintain your authority in a relationship as a man if you do feel like you don't deserve the woman that you're with, you feel like she is superior to you. And I said, my answer was that the authority you've been given isn't your authority, it's God's authority, and you have it whether you like it or not, whether you believe you do or not. You have it. And the same is true for hope. That's the beauty of the hope that you have, the promises that were made while you are in a state of intense suffering, is that those promises are made by a being who doesn't care if you believe him or not. In that instance, obviously that's not true for the totality of your faith, but the light is at the end of the tunnel. It is there, whether you can see it or not. So you don't have to worry. And in my experience, God will maintain you through your own crucifixion. God will not abandon you. He will not leave you. Even as you are shaking your fist, I got this period of my life that I keep referencing, I got quite furious with God and said things I ought not have said to him in prayer. There were moments where I did despair, moments where I did pray for it to end. I don't, whatever this is going to lead to, I don't want it. Because I would just want this to stop. So please just stop. And it didn't stop. And I am going to get, you are going to get whatever is coming, whether you want it or not, whether you believe that it's coming or not. My dad has this story. He endeavored to do something great. My dad's endeavored to do several great things and has done some, has accomplished a lot, and is one of the great men of our time. There will be many great men of our time who will live in obscurity. Most great men, I think, live in obscurity and are not recorded by history. But he endeavored to do something great, and it was one of the few times that he failed at it, and he had to kind of go back to a normal life with his tail tucked between his legs, and he was bitter about that, and angry, and expressed that anger to God, and he came out the other end of that experience years later, and now will often tell me that he felt like God was telling him through that, I'm so great and so capable of provision that I don't actually even need you to have a good attitude about this. You can have a bad attitude. You can be bitter and angry, and I'm still going to take care of you. You can shake your fist at me all you want. I don't need you. I don't need your half of this deal. And I think that's that's a profound thing to believe. And I think if you can bring yourself to a place where you believe that God is going to take care of you, whether you believe that or not. I think if you can find faith below your faith, maybe, you can experience respite. The circumstances of my life over the past 4 months have not changed at all. They've gotten worse. And I today am at much, much greater peace than I was even a week or 2 weeks ago because of that idea. I think if after listening to this you walk away with anything, I want you to walk away with hope. Hope is the sort of antidote to despair. And despair, I think, is despair, worry. These things are the opposite of faith. And I've said it a million times, and I'll say it again. If after looking back on my life, if my work has led to even just a few people having a profound increase in faith, then I will have lived what I deem to be a productive life. And I hope that God will see that, will agree with that. We'll see. So that's what I want you to walk away with. I want you to walk away with more faith. But I also want more. I think this episode more is about hope. I want you to be able to relax about your lack of faith, such that so that you can find more. I think my pastor on Sunday spoke about the beauty of the redemption, like the beauty, the amazing promise that is made in Christ's resurrection, and the implications that resurrection has on your salvation. So we've talked about Christ's suffering, its implications on your life and what it means for your suffering. But what I want to talk about for a second is his resurrection. Christ's resurrection was inevitable. Your resurrection, both in a grand sense, your salvation is inevitable. It's guaranteed to you by Christ if you're a Christian. But I think it also, in a micro way, scaled down into your life in like a self-help way, that promise, Christ's resurrection also promises you redemption here. It promises you a resurrection through your suffering here. Christ went to hell and came back. He lived, and we died, and then lived. And you will die a miniature death, 1,000 miniature deaths here. I think the path of self-improvement is this constant state of watching, like Jordan Peterson says, maybe 95% of you has to die. And over the course of your life, that 95% of you will die, and be resurrected clean and new. And I think you can look at the story of the crucifixion, Christ's resurrection, as hope that whatever you're going through, whether, I know a lot of our listeners are young guys. So you'll have like a breakup will be, a defining moment of your life. I remember my first, actual real breakup from a real girlfriend. And that was excruciating. It was by no means the most pain. Now that I'm 30, It was by no means the most pain in my life that I've experienced. I've gone through much worse now, but at the time that was devastating. And so to make it a little practical for you, if you're going through a breakup or you're staring down the barrel of running out of money, or whatever intensely distressing circumstances that you're in, you can look at the cross. You can look at Christ's resurrection as hope for your immediate future. I think another thing that I've really hammered is that there's, at least amongst Protestants, there's a lot of talk about eternity, and that's awesome. And as it should be, there should be much discussion about eternity, but there seems to be very little discussion about now. And that can I think that can induce hopelessness, because it is very difficult to process the eternity, to wrap your head around it. It seems very far away, and you're miserable now. I've had that problem where I've been like, I'm miserable right now. Heaven sounds awesome, but I'm miserable right now. And I think that Christ's resurrection has an implication on your life now. You can hold on to that. You can know that you will come back out the other side, stronger, better, having defeated some part of death in your life. I think the difference is, there is a difference, which is that you are not God. And, Jordan Peterson, at the end of his clips, talks about how you have to believe that you're capable of facing your problems. You are the thing that can look at these very serious issues in your life and face them and conquer them. And you have to believe that. I think that is wrong. I think that and I think this is easier for Christians, because you don't have to believe that about yourself. All you have to believe is that the God that created the universe is the one who can look at your problems and conquer them. You don't have to believe that you can do it, because you can't do it, not by yourself. But God can. And he defeated death. So I'm sure he can defeat your, whatever. I don't want to say it's minute, because I know that whatever suffering you're going through is going to seem climactic and huge, but relative to the things that God has defeated, it is minute. So you can face you can face your problems. You can overcome them, because God can, and through him all things are possible. And God hasn't abandoned you. And there is hope. You're not alone in your suffering, as unique as it may be. If you're a man, it can feel, I talked about this in the last episode, that validation and approval, these things are minted in the male soul by God, and that can lead to that can make you feel lonely, because sometimes there's not really anybody to turn to. I have suffered quietly in my own heart, without really talking to people much about it, for some time now, because there's not really any use in it. It's not going to solve any problems. It's not going to make anything better. And that can feel lonely. And it may feel lonely, but it isn't, because you're not alone. your suffering is not in vain. It has a purpose. And your God is a great and powerful God. He is the God. And if you don't have the Christian God of the Bible in your corner, I would recommend getting him in your corner. It's very easy. Your suffering, let's wrap this up. Your suffering is part of your own crucifixion, part of dying to yourself, part of having your sin nature, your flesh burned off of you, crucified on the cross. It is a process that you have to go through, a process that you will go through whether you want to or not, and you won't want to. I consider myself a pretty resilient person, and I had a moment of despair. I consider myself a person of pretty intense faith, mostly, that mostly has been carved out of desperation, out of having nowhere else to go, out of having God build that in me. Okay, that's not a me thing. That's God having forced me into that environment, into that arrangement. And I faltered. Your suffering is a part of your crucifixion. It's one half of the story. The other half is your resurrection. And that process, I think, is going to happen to you multiple times throughout your life. And I don't know that it ends. I don't know that there will ever come a time where you're not in this process of being crucified and resurrected as something new and better and greater. I do think that God gives you reprieve. I think he knows you're human and won't, he'll give you every bit of strength that you need in the moment, and then he'll give you as much rest as he knows you need before the next process of crucifixion begins. But your suffering is not in vain, and it has an end, and it will end. And it will end with you becoming more spectacular, more sanctified. And you don't have to believe me. All right, that's in the Bible. I would recommend maybe reading through the crucifixion story and reading it through the lens of what is this. Yes, this does have fantastic, wonderful implications about the nature of eternity and about my life after bodily death. It does have tremendous. Our pastor discussed how it has tremendous and wonderful implications for missing loved ones who have passed on into glory, and our ability to see them again and enjoy them forever in an even better way than we did here on this on this plane. But I would recommend that you read it in the context of what does Christ's resurrection imply for me now in my state of suffering. If the idea of sanctification is that I'm supposed to become more and more Christ-like throughout my life, then what is Christ's what is Christ's greatest miracle, his greatest action? What does that mean when talking about becoming Christ-like? What are the implications there? Does it mean that I'm going to suffer forever? No. It means you're going to win. It means you're going to win. And you don't even have to believe that you're going to win or that you're capable of winning. All you have to do is know that the God that created the universe, who holds everything together, has the power to win. And that through him you will win. It's not more complicated than that. It's very simple. So you may be suffering tremendously, but there is hope. And that suffering is good. It hurts. It's excruciating. I know. It does not feel good in the moment. And Christ didn't feel good in the moment. But what he did was the greatest thing ever done for all of us. And it improved the lives of everyone permanently. Just like this suffering will improve your life permanently. And you will come out the other end. You will be resurrected. You will win. You will have this small victory over this small death. And that's your hero story. Your slaying of the dragon. It's replicated in a small way in your life. Now, the main story, the main character of the main story is Christ, but you are a side character, a little one, and you have your own little stories and your own little dragons to slay. And you will do it. That's what I have for you. I hope that is helpful. I hope that falls on the ears of someone who needs to hear it. I hope you find value in that. I hope you can carry that through the rest of your life. And I hope you know it's okay to look away for a second. It's okay to despair briefly. I don't know if it's accurate to say Christ despaired, but Christ did yell out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" It sounds to me like for one moment, Christ allowed himself to believe that God had abandoned him. I guess God had abandoned him. But it does sound for like a moment, maybe Christ did allow himself to despair. Maybe that's not true. Maybe that's heretical to say. But you're not an actual God. You are human, and you are going to despair. You should repent of that. Fight against it as best you can. But I guess maybe it's better to say, not necessarily it's better to say it's okay to despair. What I will say is that that God has forgiven you for your sins. And in those moments where you do despair and you do sin, you do fall away from hope, you do fall away from your faith, you do despair, you ought not hold, Christ has forgiven you for that. And it's over. And you ought to move on. You ought not brood on the fact that you despaired. You ought not allow that to seep into who you think you are. I am a person who despairs. You're not. You're a child of God. That's the important part of your identity. So maybe it's not accurate to say it's okay to despair, but what it is accurate to say is that it is a sin to ruminate on it, to not forgive yourself, because you're questioning. To not forgive yourself for despairing is to question God's forgiving you for despairing. And God knows whether you should be forgiven or not. So who are you to decide that you ought not be forgiven for that? All right. Anyways, I love you guys. I'm sorry that the episodes have been few and far between. I do think that we're going to get a more rhythmic situation going here. I'm going to get better at keeping them pumping. I'm out of town next week. Whatever. You'll see me next week. I hope. You will see me streaming at least. I love you guys. I am praying for you. I know Jason is praying for you. Pray for us. I think Jason and I are both in the midst of just a lot of hectic stuff in life. So if you do hear this, please shoot us one up for the one time. please go to church. If you don't have a girl, find one, marry her, have some children, raise those children in the fear and admonition of the Lord. We need more Christians now more than ever. We need real Christians, strong Christians, devout Christians. Yeah, that's it. No announcements, nothing crazy. Emails are out of order for the time being. So if you've got questions, concerns, comments, you can DM us on Instagram. I am at Megathreat, and I believe Jason is Foot Soldier for Christ. Let me confirm that. Let me see. Yeah. Foot Soldier for Christ is Jason with a 4. The number 4 instead of the spelled out word 4. DM us on Instagram if you want to reach out to us. That'll be a good spot for it. Follow us on Rumble. Big help there. Follow us on YouTube. Like the stuff, whatever, algorithm and whatnot. We love you guys. Again, we're praying for you. We'll see you next week. Bye.